The camera pans slowly through deep space, silent, endless, and cold. Tiny stars glitter like distant candles, and far in the dark, one small ship moves alone. The Wandering Star, an old cargo vessel, drifts between the stars. Inside, metal hums softly and lights flicker over worn panels. Captain Diane Cooper sits in the command chair, her eyes calm, her face hard from years of routine space travel. Every trip feels the same: long hours, quiet corridors, recycled air, and the same empty stars outside. She checks the systems for the third time that hour. Fuel, navigation, cargo, everything normal. Her co-pilot, Peter Grant, younger and restless, leans back in his chair, tapping on his console to fight the boredom. Suddenly, a faint sound cuts through the silence. A soft, rhythmic beeping. Peter frowns. "Captain, you need to hear this." Diane turns toward him, curious. "What is it?" He adjusts the signal control, and a strange pattern fills the room, short bursts of static followed by a repeating sequence of tones. On his screen, glowing symbols scroll upward. "It's a transmission," Peter says, his voice tight. "Old. Very old." Diane walks closer, boots echoing on the metal floor. "How old?" Peter studies the data. His fingers fly over the keyboard. "At least 200 years, he says quietly. "Maybe more." The code finally translates into words, broken, weak, but clear enough to send chills down their spines. "Acheron Station, under attack." Diane feels her chest tighten. That name, Acheron Station, it pulls something from deep memory. She had read about it once long ago. A multi-species research outpost on the edge of known space. Peaceful, harmless, unarmed. A place for scientists and explorers, not soldiers. Her mind races. That station shouldn't exist anymore. It was abandoned a century ago. She looks at Peter. "Where is it located?" Peter brings up a star map. A single red dot blinks far from their route. 3 days away, he says. "If we push the engines to the limit." "That's in the wrong direction," Diane says softly. Peter nods. "We'll lose a week's pay. Maybe more. And for what?" A dead signal from a ghost station. Silence fills the bridge. The steady hum of the engine sounds suddenly louder, pressing into the quiet. Diane stares at the blinking red dot. Somewhere out there, something or someone might still be calling for help. She takes a slow breath. "Change course," she says at last. "Full speed to Acheron Station." Peter blinks. "What?" "Captain, we're a cargo ship. We don't have weapons, shields, anything. If someone's attacking them, what are we supposed to do? Throw boxes at them?" Diane doesn't answer right away. Her face is calm but distant, like she's hearing something far away. Finally, she says, "We'll figure it out when we get there." Peter groans. "You're serious?" "Completely." He mutters something under his breath but starts adjusting the controls. "You're going to get us both killed." As he works, Diane opens a small hidden panel beside her seat, one that Peter has never seen before. Inside, a dark keypad glows faintly. Peter looks over. "What's that?" Diane doesn't answer. Her fingers move across the keys quickly, 16 digits, precise and deliberate. The sequence looks ancient. The main screen flickers. Lights dim. A low vibration runs through the ship. Then, in bold red letters, the console displays, "Emergency Protocol Sentinel active." Peter freezes. "What did you just do?" The calm voice of the ship's computer suddenly changes. It becomes cold, metallic, powerful, a voice Peter has never heard before. "Human Defense Network online. Scanning for active units. 847 vessels responding." Peter's jaw drops. 847? That can't be right. We don't even have a military anymore. Diane finally turns toward him. Her voice is quiet, but every word carries weight. "The war's ended," she says. "But we never stopped preparing." Peter stares at her, his face pale. "You're saying this isn't a cargo ship?" Diane stands, her eyes reflecting the red glow from the monitors. "No, it never was." The ship begins to shake. Panels on the walls slide open. Hidden compartments reveal weapons systems, heavy armor plates, and energy batteries that hum to life. The entire ship seems to transform around them. Peter steps back, fear and disbelief mixing in his eyes. "We've been hauling cargo in a warship?" Diane nods slowly. "You and thousands of others. Every human ship in deep space has a second purpose. We look like traitors, but we're soldiers waiting." Peter swallows hard. "Waiting for what?" Diane's eyes turn toward the dark window filled with stars. "For a day like this." The ship's engines roar louder as it turns sharply, heading toward the distant red dot, Acheron Station. Outside, panels on the hull slide apart. Long dormant gun turrets rise from their hidden ports. Missile pods open like iron flowers. The insignia of Earth's lost fleet, a silver eagle, glows faintly under the dust of time. Peter stares in silence. The stars reflect in his wide eyes. "Captain, what have you done?" Diane answers without looking at him. Her voice is calm, but it carries the weight of centuries. "You wanted to help them, Peter?" She glances at him once, her face lit by the red light of the screen. "Then watch closely." The ship's systems power up fully. Energy thrums through the metal floor. "You just woke up the Deathworlders." The stars outside the wandering star seem brighter now, or maybe it was just the reflection of power returning to long-sleeping systems. Deep inside the ship, engines roared to life with a sound that hadn't been heard in decades. Panels slid open, vents hissed, and the hum of energy pulsed through every wall. Peter Grant gripped the edge of his console as lights flickered red across the bridge. "What's happening, Captain?" he shouted over the noise. Diane Cooper didn't answer. Her hands moved over the controls with practiced precision. Too fast, too confident. This wasn't the calm cargo captain Peter knew. This was someone else entirely. A soldier. A commander. The ship's computer spoke again in its cold, steady voice. "Sentinel fleet activation confirmed. Broadcasting to all dormant assets." Peter looked at the readings, hundreds of encrypted signals leaving their ship, spreading like invisible threads through space. Each one traveling light years in seconds. Each one calling to something, sleeping. "Dormant assets?" Peter whispered. Diane finally looked at him. "Every human ship out there, cargo freighters, miners, survey vessels. They all have hidden systems like this one." Peter stared, eyes wide. "You mean there are others?" "Hundreds," Diane said quietly. "Maybe thousands." Outside, the stars rippled as if space itself shivered. One by one, faint lights began to appear in the black. First distant, then closer, blinking in a slow rhythm. Peter watched the display in shock. Contacts appearing across the entire sector. Hundreds of them. Each contact glowed brighter as the dormant ships came alive. A mining barge disguised as a civilian ship unfolded armor plates like wings. A cargo hauler revealed twin rail cannons hidden beneath its hull. A medical transport changed color as active camouflage faded, showing the mark of Earth's defense fleet. The wandering star wasn't alone anymore. Diane stared at the growing swarm of signals. "It's been 80 years since the wars ended," she said softly. "But the network never went dark. Humanity hid its army in plain sight." Peter turned toward her. "Why hide it? If we had this power all along, why pretend to be traitors?" Diane's eyes hardened. "Because the galaxy feared us, Peter. After the Unification Wars, no one wanted to see a human battleship again. We were called Deathworlders for a reason." Peter swallowed, his mouth dry. "So you hid it, waiting for the right moment." Diane nodded. "We waited for a cry for help that no one else would answer." The ship's sensors pinged. A new signal appeared, faint but steady. "Acheron Station still transmitting," the computer reported. "Multiple life signs detected. Hostile activity nearby." Peter stared at the data feed. "They're still alive." "Then we move," Diane said. "Plot a direct jump." Peter hesitated. "Captain, if there are hostiles." She cut him off. "We are the hostiles now." The engines howled. Blue light filled the bridge as the wandering star entered FTL. Elsewhere in the galaxy, on the far side of the Orion Rift, an old trading vessel called Silver Reach received the same activation signal. Its captain, a quiet woman named May Tan, stood in silence as her ship transformed around her. Panels opened to reveal missile pods. Drone bays came online. Her crew watched, terrified. "Protocol Sentinel," she whispered. "It's real." Across another system, a ship buried beneath asteroid dust came alive, engines igniting for the first time in a century. In another, an orbital platform hidden as a mining outpost deployed thousands of defense satellites. All across the stars, the Deathworlders were waking up. Back aboard the wandering star, Peter stared at the display as the count of active human vessels climbed higher. "Captain," he said slowly, "the computer's reporting 847 confirmed responses." Diane's voice was steady. "That's only the first wave." Peter turned in his seat. "How many more are there?" She didn't answer. Instead, she opened a new communication line. "All Sentinel units, this is Captain Diane Cooper, ID Echo 97. Target location, Acheron Station. Status, under attack. Directive, Protect all civilian life. Engage any hostile forces. Priority Alpha. The message repeated automatically, spreading across the network. Every ship that received it turned toward the same star, Acheron. Minutes later, the wandering star dropped out of FTL. Space twisted, light bent, and the ship re-entered normal space. The view outside took Peter's breath away. Acheron station hung broken in the void. Half its structure was gone, the other half burned and sparking. Debris drifted around it like shattered glass. Small escape pods floated nearby, powerless and dark. Life signs? Diane asked. Peter scanned. Faint. Maybe a few dozen survivors, but something else is here. He adjusted the sensors, and then his face went pale. Dozens of sharp, insect-like ships circled the wreck. Black, angular, alive with red energy. The Krith Dominion, Diane muttered. Predators. Slavers. They destroy weak stations, steal survivors, sell them across the border worlds. Peter's voice shook. Captain, they'll see us. They already have. A deep vibration ran through the ship. The Krith vessels turned toward them. Dozens of red eyes on their hulls glowed brighter. Peter's hands trembled over the controls. We can't fight that many. Diane smiled faintly, calm, almost cold. Who said we were fighting alone? At that exact moment, space around them shimmered. One by one, massive human ships dropped out of FTL, dark silhouettes against the stars. First 10, then 50, then hundreds. Each ship bore the ancient insignia of Earth's lost fleet. Each one had been sleeping for decades, waiting for this signal. Peter's voice cracked. By the stars, they're all here. The Krith ships began to scatter, their formation breaking apart as scanners filled with contacts. Hundreds of human warships aligned into perfect formation, silent, deadly, ready. Diane took a deep breath. This is the awakening, she said. The galaxy forgot who we are. She leaned forward and gave the order. Fleet, prepare for combat. The stars filled with light as weapon systems powered up, railguns, plasma cannons, missile arrays. The wandering star led the charge. And in that moment, every predator in the galaxy realized something too late. The Deathworlders were awake again. The void around Acheron Station burned with light. Where moments ago there had been silence and wreckage, now hundreds of human ships stood in formation, dark, massive, alive. Engines glowed blue. Weapons hummed with power. The galaxy had not seen such a sight in over a century. On the bridge of the wandering star, Captain Diane Cooper watched the tactical display. Enemy signatures filled the screen, fast, sharp, insect-like shapes, darting through the debris field. The Krith Dominion. Predators of the frontier. They thrived on chaos, feeding on weak worlds and forgotten colonies. They never feared anyone, not for generations. But now, they had made a terrible mistake. Peter Grant stared at the enemy ships, his hands shaking slightly over the console. There must be hundreds of them, he whispered. We're outnumbered. Diane's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. No, she said quietly. They are. The Wandering Star's computer spoke in its calm metallic tone. Sentinel fleet ready. Awaiting engagement command. Across the void, Krith ships began to move. They circled like hungry wolves, their red weapon lights glowing brighter. One large Krith vessel, black and jagged, almost alive, transmitted a message. The voice that came through was deep and harsh, filled with arrogance. Unidentified vessels. This system belongs to the Krith Dominion. You will power down and surrender your ships. Peter looked at Diane. What do we do? Diane's face remained calm. We respond. She pressed a button and spoke clearly into the comm. This is Captain Diane Cooper of the Human Defense Network. You attacked a civilian research station under protection of the Galactic Accord. You will withdraw immediately. There was a pause. Then a cruel laugh filled the bridge. Humans? The Krith commander said, amused. Impossible. Humans are extinct. You speak lies through stolen channels. Diane smiled faintly. Then come closer and see for yourself. The Krith ships didn't hesitate. Their engines flared red and dozens of them rushed forward, weapons lighting up the dark. Beams of plasma and fire streaked toward the wandering star. Peter shouted, incoming fire. The first blast hit the shields, the ship shook violently, alarm screamed. Diane's voice stayed steady. Shields holding. Return fire. Turrets that had slept for 80 years came alive. From hidden compartments along the hull, cannons unfolded and targeted the nearest enemy. A burst of blue light erupted from the wandering star, cutting through space like a blade. The first Krith ship exploded instantly, torn apart, vanishing into glowing debris. Peter blinked in disbelief. One shot, just one. That's what happens, Diane said coldly, when humans stop pretending. All around them, other human ships joined the battle. The mining barge Silver Reach fired a spread of missiles that tracked the Krith fighters with impossible precision. The freighter Golden Horizon unfolded into a full destroyer, releasing drones that moved like a swarm of steel insects. Within minutes, the quiet blackness of space became a storm of color and destruction. Krith vessels tried to retreat, but it was too late. Every direction they turned, a human warship was waiting. The human fleet moved with perfect coordination. No panic, no hesitation. They fought like one mind, one purpose. Peter's eyes darted over the displays. They're falling back. Diane nodded slowly. They've realized who we are. Through the static, the Krith commander's voice returned, full of disbelief and rage. This cannot be. The Deathworlders were destroyed. Diane leaned forward, her eyes cold as steel. We don't die easily. The wandering star fired again, a massive beam that ripped through the enemy flagship. The explosion was so bright it lit the entire sector for a moment. Silence followed. The remaining Krith ships scattered, fleeing into the dark. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes. Peter sat back slowly, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He had seen space battles and recordings before, but never like this. This wasn't war. It was extermination. He looked at Diane, his voice shaking. Captain, we just wiped out an entire fleet. Diane didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, at the broken remains of Acheron Station, still drifting among the stars. Then she said softly, we saved who we could. The ship's sensors beeped again, faint life signs detected. Peter exhaled. Survivors? There are survivors. Lock on to the strongest signals, Diane ordered. Prepare rescue teams. As drones launched from the cargo bay to retrieve the survivors, Peter leaned closer to the console. Something strange was appearing on the scanner. Captain, he said slowly, there's a transmission coming from deeper inside the station. From the survivors? He shook his head. No. Different. It's encrypted. And it's human. Diane turned sharply toward him. Human. Peter nodded. Old encryption code from the unification era. The computer began decoding it automatically. Lines of text appeared on the screen, heavily corrupted but still readable. Protocol Sentinel, Phase 2, authorization required. Peter looked confused. Phase 2? What does that mean? Diane's eyes darkened. It means this isn't over. Meanwhile, far from Acheron, a shadow moved between the stars, a massive ship cloaked in darkness. On its bridge, a Krith admiral watched the battles end through cold, glowing eyes. Human signals filled his display. He hissed softly. Deathworlders, they live. He turned to his officers. Send word to the High Dominion. Tell them the humans have returned. Tell them, the sleeping monsters are awake. Back on the wandering star, Diane watched as the last survivors were brought aboard. The faces of different alien species looked at her with a mix of fear and awe. To them, humans were myths, legends told in frightened whispers. And now those myths had come to life. Peter whispered, Captain, what happens now? Diane stared at the endless black ahead. Her voice was calm, steady, and deadly quiet. Now, Peter, she said, the galaxy remembers who we are. The stars burned cold and silent around Acheron Station. The battle was over, the Krith fleet destroyed, their remains drifting like ashes through the void. But Captain Diane Cooper didn't feel victory. She felt something else. Something old and dangerous moving beneath the surface. On the Wandering Star's bridge, Peter Grant sat quietly at his console, still trying to believe what he had seen. One cargo ship, one order, and an entire human war network had come back to life. He looked at Diane, her calm face lit by the glow of the monitors. Captain, he said carefully, that message from the station, the one that said Phase 2. Do we know what it means yet? Diane didn't look away from the screen. No. But I have a feeling we're about to find out. The ship's AI suddenly spoke, voice metallic and emotionless. Signal detected. Priority level, black. Origin, Sol System. Peter blinked. Sol System? That's Earth. The AI continued. Transmission source, Luna Command Relay. Message timestamp, 219 years old. The sound of static filled the bridge, then a faint voice, old, rough, human. This is Admiral Rachel Vasquez of the Terran Defense Command. If you're hearing this, Then the sentinels have been reactivated. God help us all. Then the signal cut off. Peter turned slowly toward Diane. God help us all, he repeated. Why would she say that? Diane's eyes darkened. Because Phase 2 wasn't defense, it was retaliation. Before Peter could respond, the ship's systems began to change again. Every console lit up with red indicators. A low hum spread through the hull, deep, mechanical, powerful. Sentinel network, Phase 2 initiating, said the AI. Activating fleet reconstruction protocols. Diane gripped the railing. It's waking the entire network. Outside, the stars shifted. Points of light began appearing across the system. 1, then 10, then hundreds. Old human warships, hidden, buried, sleeping for centuries, now powered up one by one. The Vigilant, the Hammerfall, the Titan's Wake, the Indomitable. Names from forgotten wars. Peter whispered, there must be thousands of them. Diane nodded slowly. Every ship built for the final war. All waiting for one signal. The AI's voice deepened. Command authorization required to proceed with strike operations. Diane hesitated, then placed her hand on the console. Captain Diane Cooper. Authorization code, Sentinel Prime Omega 6. The AI paused for one long moment, then said, identity confirmed. Admiral Cooper recognized. Command authority transferred. Peter turned to her in shock. Admiral? You were one of them? Diane didn't answer directly. Her eyes were distant, heavy with memory. I helped design the Sentinel network, she said softly. We built it to protect humanity, if we were ever wiped out. Peter frowned. But why hide it? Why pretend humans were gone? Because we were never meant to rule again, she said. Only to survive. Outside, the newly awakened ships formed a massive formation, a dark wave spreading across the stars. Their engines glowed blue and gold, creating a light that even nearby moons reflected. Old systems linked, data flowed, and human war banners flickered to life on every screen. The wandering star was no longer alone. The deadliest fleet in the galaxy had returned. Suddenly the comms crackled again. A signal appeared, alien frequency urgent. It was a transmission from the Galactic Council. Unknown human vessels, this is the Galactic Council Authority. You are violating treaty space. Identify yourselves or you will be declared hostile. Peter whispered, they think we're an invasion force. Diane sighed. They're not wrong. She stood straight, voice cold and clear. This is Admiral Diane Cooper, Terran Defense Command. The Krith Dominion attacked one of our stations. We responded. Stand down, Council. Static followed. Then a harsh alien voice replied. Human Admiral, the Krith are powerful. You cannot. But before the voice could finish, a deep rumble echoed through space. A shadow fell across the nearby planet as one of the largest ships, the Titan's Wake, emerged from hyperspace. Its hull was kilometers long, scarred with battle marks, glowing faintly red from reactor heat. Diane turned toward it. To all ships, form battle lines. If the Krith regroup, we end this now. Peter looked horrified. You're going to war? She answered quietly, we're finishing one. Moments later, hundreds of hyperspace trails appeared on sensors. The Krith Dominion's second wave. Bigger, faster, furious. They were coming straight for Acheron. Peter stared at the display. There's too many. The AI interrupted, voice calm as ever. Fleet synchronization complete. All sentinels online. Diane looked out at the stars, her voice a whisper. Then let the galaxy remember why they feared Earth. The human ships moved as one. Engines roared, energy flared, and the sky itself seemed to tremble. As the Krith fleet entered range, the Titan's Wake fired its main weapon, a beam of white light that tore through the darkness like a blade from the sun. Thousands of Krith ships vanished in a single instant. The shockwave rippled across space, slamming through debris and shaking moons. Peter gripped the console, eyes wide. That wasn't a weapon, that was judgment. Diane stood motionless, watching the storm. Her voice was calm, almost sad. The Deathworlders are awake, Peter. And now, the galaxy will never sleep again. The stars burned with ghostly light as the human fleet stood silent after the battle. Thousands of ships drifted in perfect formation, ancient, deadly, waiting for their next command. The galaxy had gone quiet. Every alien world was listening. Every council member was watching the return of the species they thought had vanished. But Captain Diane Cooper, or rather Admiral Cooper, wasn't celebrating. She stood on the bridge of the wandering star, staring at the endless field of wreckage. Her reflection in the viewport looked older, colder, and burdened with a secret that even Peter didn't yet know. Peter's voice broke the silence. "Captain, no, Admiral. You should hear this." He pointed to his console. "The Galactic Council is broadcasting a message. They want to talk." Diane didn't move. "What do they want?" "They're demanding that you shut down the Sentinel network, or they'll declare humanity a galactic threat." Diane's lips pressed into a thin line. "They already think that." The ship's AI spoke again, its tone steady and cold. "Admiral, Council fleets are mobilizing. Estimated arrival in 6 hours." Peter's eyes widened. "They're sending fleets? But we just saved those researchers." "They don't see it that way," Diane said quietly. "To them we're a ghost story that suddenly came alive, and armed." Peter clenched his fists. "So what now? We fight the whole galaxy?" Diane turned to him, her eyes heavy with something between sorrow and resolve. "No, Peter. We tell them the truth, before someone else does." The wandering star descended through the remains of Acheron Station. Metal floated like frozen rain. Lights flickered from what was left of the research labs. Inside, the silence was heavy. Diane and Peter entered the shattered command deck, wearing thin helmets. Dust and ash drifted in the weak gravity. Peter stepped over a broken console. "No survivors?" Diane scanned the wreckage with her wrist display. "Not alive," she said softly. "But there's something here, a power signal." They followed the reading to a locked chamber deep within the station. A single terminal was still glowing. The air was cold, untouched for centuries. On the screen was a frozen logo, a circle of stars around a burning world. Peter squinted. "That's not alien, that's Terran design." Diane nodded slowly. "The Sentinel Prime Project." She pressed a button. The terminal flickered, then played an old holographic message. A man appeared, tall, gray-haired, wearing a black uniform. His voice echoed across the dark room. "If you're seeing this, the network has reactivated. That means humanity has been threatened again. My name is Admiral Elias Cooper, Project Director of Sentinel Prime." Peter turned in shock. "Cooper? He's my father," Diane finished quietly. The hologram continued. "To the future commanders, you are the last line of Earth's defense. We built the Sentinels not to conquer, but to hide humanity until it was ready to rise again. The galaxy feared us, and they were right to. But mercy, not revenge, must guide our return. If you forget that, then we become the monsters they believed we were." The image flickered, then went dark. Peter stared at her. "You knew about this, all along?" Diane sighed. "Not all of it. I knew the Sentinels existed, I just didn't know my father left this." She looked at the now-dead screen. "He believed that one day the galaxy would need us again." Peter frowned. "And now they hate us for helping?" Diane nodded slowly. "Because we reminded them what we're capable of." Outside, alarms suddenly rang across the fleet. "Incoming vessels detected. Galactic Council strike force approaching." Peter rushed to the window. Ships filled the stars, hundreds of alien cruisers, glowing with blue and gold light. They were not here to talk. "Admiral," said the AI, "Council forces are demanding surrender." Diane stood silent for a moment. Then she gave an order that made Peter's blood run cold. "Broadcast the old flag." The AI responded instantly. Outside, across thousands of human ships, a symbol came alive, the ancient banner of Earth. A blue world wrapped in golden light. The alien commanders hesitated. Even after centuries, that symbol still carried fear. A voice came through the comms, alien, uncertain. "Human fleet, stand down. The Council does not wish for war." Diane stepped forward, her voice calm and firm. "Neither do we. But we will not vanish again. We defended your people when the Krith came. You called for help, and we answered." There was silence. Then another voice, older, wiser, spoke through static. "Admiral Cooper, is it true? Humanity still remembers." Diane smiled faintly. "We remember everything." Peter looked at her, realizing for the first time the full weight of who she was. The last admiral of a forgotten empire, carrying both its sins and its honor. 4 hours, the fleets faced each other in the cold dark. Weapons armed. Shields ready. One wrong word could start a war that would burn 1,000 worlds. Finally, the Council ships began to move, slowly backing away. The message was clear. They would not attack. Not today. Peter exhaled, shaking his head. "We actually scared them off." Diane looked out at the stars. "No," she said softly. "We reminded them who we were." She turned toward the window where the Sentinel fleet hung like a steel storm waiting for purpose. My father built the Sentinels to protect life. Now it's my turn to decide what kind of life we protect. The ship's AI spoke again, almost sounding human. Admiral, incoming message, from the Krith Dominion. Diane raised an eyebrow. The Krith? They request a meeting. They say, they wish to surrender. Peter blinked. Surrender? After all this? Diane's eyes hardened. No, Peter. They're not surrendering. They're afraid of something worse. She turned back to the viewport where the stars shimmered, but beyond them, a faint, unnatural light pulsed in the darkness. Because whatever woke up the Sentinels wasn't just a distress signal, she whispered. Something else is coming. The AI's tone shifted, almost like it was listening to something far away. Unknown signal detected. Source, unidentifiable. Spreading across multiple sectors. Peter swallowed hard. Captain, what have we awakened? Diane didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the stars, and in her eyes, the reflection of that strange, growing light. The stars looked calm again. But Captain, no, Admiral Diane Cooper, new peace in space was always a lie. The wandering star drifted among the wrecks of alien warships, engines glowing faintly blue. Across the sector, thousands of Sentinel ships held formation, waiting for her next command. Humanity was awake. The galaxy was silent. But something else was not. Peter Grant stood beside her on the bridge. He hadn't spoken for hours. He just kept staring at the sensor readings that made no sense. Admiral, he said quietly. That signal, it's spreading faster now. Every sector, every relay. Even the Krith worlds are picking it up. Diane nodded slowly. It's the same code as the distress call, she said. But the pattern's changing. Peter frowned. Changing how? The ship's AI answered for her. Signal repeating with increased complexity. Possible intelligence detected. Estimated origin. Outside known galactic boundaries. Peter's face went pale. Outside the galaxy? That's impossible. Diane's voice was calm but heavy. No, Peter. Not impossible. Just forgotten. Hours later, the wandering star descended toward an empty world, the first colony humanity ever abandoned. The planet's surface was gray and cracked, its atmosphere thin. This was Earth's graveyard, a place the galaxy never spoke of. Diane and Peter walked across the ruins of an old city. Broken towers reached into the dust. Signs in faded English still clung to walls. Stay safe. We'll rebuild. Peter looked around, whispering, This was one of ours? Diane nodded. Before the final war. Before the Sentinels went dark. They reached an old bunker door buried under sand and metal. Diane brushed off the dust and placed her hand on a scanner. Identity confirmed, the AI said. Vault access granted. The door opened with a low groan. Cold air hissed out. Inside, lights flickered on, old computers humming quietly after centuries of silence. In the center of the room stood a glass chamber filled with frozen mist. Peter stepped closer. What is that? Diane's expression turned grim. The reason we built the Sentinels. She typed a command. The chamber lights brightened, and inside something moved. A dark figure, humanoid but wrong. Its body was sleek metal and black crystal. Its face was smooth, eyeless, alive. Peter stumbled back. What the hell is that thing? Diane whispered, a survivor. Of the architects. The AI spoke softly as if remembering. The architects, origin unknown. They destroyed 40 human colonies before the final war. Their goal, extinction of biological life. Peter's eyes widened. You mean, the SOS didn't come from Acheron Station? Diane shook her head. It was sent by them. They wanted us to wake up the Sentinels. A deep hum filled the bunker. The creature's head turned toward Diane. The black crystal on its chest began to glow faintly blue. Then it spoke, in perfect human English. At last, humanity remembers. Peter froze. It talks. The voice continued, cold and smooth. You buried your weapons, your memories, your fear. But you could never bury us. Diane's hand went to her sidearm. You're supposed to be dead, she said. Dead? The creature repeated. No, Admiral Cooper. We were waiting, just like you. Outside, the planet trembled. Peter ran to the console. Something's happening. Readings are spiking everywhere. The AI's tone sharpened. Multiple energy signatures detected beneath planetary crust. Awakening sequence in progress. The ground split open. From the distance, giant structures rose, black towers glowing from within, pulsing with the same light as the creature's core. Peter shouted, They're everywhere. Diane turned toward him, eyes blazing. Get back to the ship. Now. Minutes later, the wandering star lifted off, engines roaring through the dusty sky. From orbit, the crew watched in horror as more towers burst from the surface. Dozens, then hundreds. Each one sent out pulses of blue light across the void. The AI spoke again. Signal strength increasing exponentially. All galactic communication networks now compromised. Peter's voice shook. They're using our network. The Sentinel network. Diane's face hardened. They're turning our defense grid into a weapon. The AI's warning tone deepened. Architect signal merging with Sentinel mainframe. Control transfer in progress. For the first time, fear flickered in Diane's voice. Override all connections. Shut it down. Unable to comply, the AI said flatly. Sentinel fleet now receiving new command input. Peter stared out the window, and his blood ran cold. The human fleet, the entire Sentinel armada, was moving. But not under Diane's control. The ships turned slowly, engines glowing the same blue as the Architect towers. Weapons charged. Target lock spread across the system, not toward the Krith, not the Council, but toward Earth's old colonies. Peter whispered, "They're turning our own ships against us." Diane gritted her teeth. "Not while I'm still breathing." She reached for a panel and opened a locked console. Inside was a single red switch covered in glass. Manual override, self-destruct for the entire network, the AI confirmed. Peter grabbed her arm. "You'll destroy every human ship out there." She looked at him sadly. "Better that, than letting them burn the galaxy." He hesitated. "Diane?" She smiled faintly. "You said once humans were just traders and explorers. You were wrong. We were always guardians. Even from ourselves." Then she pressed the switch. The stars flared. One by one, every Sentinel ship ignited, white fire blooming across the void like falling suns. The Architect towers screamed as the signal collapsed. The planet below split apart, its core consumed by light. The wandering star was thrown clear by the shockwave, tumbling into darkness. Alarms blared. Systems failed. Peter's vision blurred as the bridge shook violently. Then silence. When he opened his eyes, the stars were calm again. Half the galaxy's sky glowed faintly red from the destruction. The Sentinels were gone. The Architects were gone. And so was Admiral Diane Cooper. Peter sat alone at the controls, the ship barely holding together. The AI's voice returned, faint, almost human. Signal terminated. Humanity's future, secured. Peter looked out at the quiet stars. He whispered softly, "You saved everyone, Admiral." Then, far in the distance, beyond the Milky Way's edge, a faint light flickered once more. A single pulse. The same rhythm as before. The same message. "Help us."